Not going to comment on any of this stuff until this took place. Watch what she says. The entire internet has reacted to this. Here's Brittney Griner. They're playing against the Indiana Fever, and look what she's saying. Go ahead, Rob.
For the ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier today.
Well, that pretty much sounds like trash. If you want fans, if you want your league to grow, act like a professional, okay? The league already started underwater, and instead of fixing it, they're just poking more holes in the boat. And think about it, Brittney Griner talking all that trash. We traded the merchant of death for your ass, and you're out there talking.
Speaking Bet Patrick, Brittney Griner's racist attack on Caitlin Clark was completely discredited by David's co-host Vincent Oshana, and the reaction is going viral. PBD's squad didn't mince words while discussing Griner's abhorrent actions and the WNBA's blatant hypocrisy. Everyone was thinking this takedown, but they were reluctant to publicly express it. If you want fans, should we have exchanged the Merchant of Death for someone who makes racist remarks against the biggest basketball star in America?
If you want fans, if you want your league to grow, act like a professional, okay? The league already started underwater, and instead of fixing it, they're just poking more holes in the boat. And think about it, Brittney Griner talking all that trash. We traded the Merchant of Death for your ass, and you're out there talking.
The verbal abuse that Brittney Griner so richly deserved was just delivered by Vincent Oshana of the Patrick Bet David Show. And to be honest, it's about time that someone with a voice dared to express what millions of Americans were considering. When discussing Griner's racist attack on Caitlin Clark, the PBD team didn't mince words, and their answer is just the reality check this entire scenario needed. Since this is more than just an event, allow me to explain what transpired. This relates to the WNBA's total moral decay and the poisonous atmosphere they've fostered, where criticizing their own biggest star is not only tolerated but seems encouraged. The entire incident began when Griner was shown on tape allegedly calling Clark garbage and a filthy white girl after fouling out of a game against Clark's Indiana Fever.
For the ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier today.
Let's get perfectly clear on one point now. Clark's career would have ended sooner than you could say cancel culture if she had said anything even somewhat comparable about a black player. She would likely have to offer 17 separate apologies, be suspended, fined, and required to participate in sensitivity training. However, the double standard is so blatant that it is offensive to anyone with working brain cells when Griner uses racial epithets at Clark and the league office remains nothing.
With Brittney Griner, right? And then the other quote, Rob, then I'm going to wrap this up and then I'm going to go to Adam. Put the quote of Brittney Griner, what she said about the NBA. This is so funny how all this stuff works out, right? She says, this is from Brittney. Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there, watching on
At this point in their podcast conversation, Vincent Oshana took over and said what needed to be said. Oshana completely dismantled Griner's duplicity and the WNBA's outdated priorities as a whole. He emphasized the situation's utter absurdity. The player who is out here screaming racist remarks about the one person who is genuinely drawing attention to their meaningless league was actually traded for a Russian arms dealer known as the Merchant of Death.
Brittney Griner voiced frustration in a recent interview, claiming that Caitlin Clark is ruining what used to make the WNBA great. Wait for this.
Empty stands?
Tom, let me just...
Go ahead, I'm so mad.
WNBA games used to be a chill, quiet place. You could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. But now, it's like there's a large gathering of people watching us from the stands. Some of them are yelling crazy shit about what they're seeing, putting unfair pressure on us to score like we're...
The precision of Ona's takedown was precise. He criticized the way players like Angel Reese and Griner act as like the league owes them something. The entitlement is astounding when you consider it, even if they are millionaires and ought to be appreciative of their opportunities. Despite earning a nice living from their favorite sport, these athletes are nonetheless victims since the best player in their league just so happens to be.
Are you
I act like this.
Okay,
Rob, can you verify that this is what she said on the mom and pop WNBA model? That she's sick of the and then she says the whole thing is toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling couldn't hear what they were saying exactly.
Additionally, the Patrick Bet-David team brought attention to something that the majority of the mainstream media won't discuss. Caitlin Clark's bending the knee tactic was a total disaster. Recall Clark's embarrassing remarks regarding white privilege and her need to promote black women. Oshana and the PBD team pointed that out as the point at which we stopped respecting Clark, and they were 100% correct.
WNBA is never, ever, ever going to work and never make money. And this is exactly what Caitlin Clark gets for bending the knee. Do you guys remember when she said, when we lost all respect for her, when she said, I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege. And the more we can elevate black women, this is going to be a beautiful thing. That's when it was all over. And Angel Reese and Brittney Griner, they walk around like the league owes them something. Even Ryan Clark's attitude as if, bro, where's the victimhood? These are freaking millionaires. Like, what are you talking about? It's attitude, it's no humility, just entitlement, and that's not confidence.
Clark attempted to play the politically correct game in the hopes that her peers would accept her if she simply acknowledged her alleged privilege and did all the right things. But instead it made her appear weak and provided her detractors with more justification to attack her. Gurrier and Rhee, among other players, took advantage of that vulnerability and saw Clark's humility as a confession of guilt rather than an effort to mend fences. The WNBA's ongoing financial collapse was aptly explained by the PBD research. Instead of defending and advancing their golden goose, they have fostered an atmosphere where assaulting Clark is not only acceptable but practically necessary if you want to blend in with the more experienced players, even if they have the most marketable player in women's basketball history. Oshana's comment regarding the Merchant of Death trade was especially heartbreaking since it brought to light how completely ridiculous the scenario is. In order to free Gurrier from a Russian prison where she was being detained on drug-related charges, the US government essentially swapped one of the most dangerous arms dealers in the world. She expresses her thanks in this way by making racial remarks about the player who is rescuing her league from total obscurity. These remarks are even more ludicrous given their timing. Given that Clark is now injured and will be sidelined for 2 weeks, WNBA viewership is set to plummet. The league will soon receive a sobering reminder of just how reliant they are on Clark's celebrity. However, rather than expressing gratitude for her contributions to the game, players like Gurrier are actively trying to get her to leave. The absurdity of the WNBA's selective anger was also perfectly captured by the Patrick Bet-David team. The league started looking into claims of racist remarks made by supporters about Angel Reese right away, even though no one really heard them and they might not have occurred. However, when there is unmistakable video proof that Gurrier made racial comments toward Clark, radio silence, the message is unambiguous. Only when racism goes in one direction is it harmful. The Gurrier incident is hardly the only instance of this double standard. Over her career, Clark has seen an unparalleled degree of verbal and physical harassment from rivals. De poked her in the eye. Jane Carrington received continual criticism for her popularity and was the object of foul acts. However, they were taught to be quiet and accept it when she or her coach ventured to voice concerns about the officiating or treatment. The PBD crew's prediction that the WNBA would fail was accurate. When your main attraction is aggressively attacked and resented by your existing stars, it is impossible to create a successful entertainment offering. It's corporate suicide masquerading as social justice. The league has persuaded itself that backing Clark somehow devalues other athletes, when in actuality, everyone benefits from her success. Vincent Oshana made a particularly wise observation regarding attitude and entitlement. Successful leagues are aware that their role is to provide fans with entertainment and engaging plots. The WNBA appears to believe that their role is to provide subpar basketball while lecturing people about social problems. That lacks confidence. Without the performance to support it, that is arrogance. It was damning to compare to other professional leagues. NBA players don't routinely disparage their league's top players, however they may occasionally argue or gripe about calls. They are aware that all boats are lifted by increasing tides. LeBron James realizes that Stephen Curry's success benefits the league as a whole, so he doesn't waste his time attempting to undermine him. However, the WNBA has a poisonous culture where winning is seen as a zero-sum game. If Clark succeeds in any way, it implies that other players are being undervalued. It's a narrow-minded strategy that exposes the lack of professionalism and maturity displayed by many of these athletes, yet they would sooner discredit the one person promoting their sport than try to profit from it. The PBD team's prognosis regarding attendance during Clark's injury absence will turn out to be accurate. You can expect that TV ratings will plummet as well, and ticket prices for the games she's missing have already drastically decreased. The league is going to learn the hard way how much they rely on the player that some of their top players appear to hate. The background of Griner's own career is what Detained makes her remarks even more offensive. She has been playing in the league for more than 10 years, but she hasn't done much to advance women's basketball. Throughout her tenure, the WNBA was losing money and playing in mostly empty arenas, but for some reason, she feels entitled to criticize the one athlete who has truly altered that dynamic. The research by Patrick Bet-David also demonstrated how this episode aptly captures every flaw in contemporary American society. We have a situation where the racist gets away with it because she fits the correct identity boxes, but the victim of racism is chastised for not responding to it better. It is a total reversal of fundamental morality. Vincent Oshana's reply that Griner was repulsive for his racial remarks was precisely the kind of moral clarity that this circumstance required. Too many people are reluctant to point out overt racism when it originates from particular groups, but the PBD crew wasn't amused by that. Regardless of who is committing or receiving it, racism is racism. This incident's wider ramifications go well beyond basketball. It's a prime illustration of how identity politics have tainted everything they come into contact with. We are expected to consider race and grievance when deciding who merits support, rather than praising quality and accomplishment. Not being a bad guy or a bad athlete, but rather succeeding while white, is Clark's crime. It was especially crucial that Clark stop bending his knee, as the PBD crew pointed out. She didn't gain any respect for her attempts to placate her detractors by admitting her privilege and making politically acceptable remarks. It only made her back a target. You cannot reason with those who essentially dislike you and your accomplishments. There is no denying the economic realities that Patrick Bet-David's team brought to light. The WNBA has never turned a profit and loses tens of millions of dollars annually. They at last acquire a player who can genuinely generate income and interest, but rather than safeguarding that investment, they permit her to be disparaged and assaulted. It is a level of corporate misconduct that would result in the termination of executives in any other sector. Vincent Oshana made a particularly wise insight when he said that players like Griner and react as though the league owes them something. They seem to believe that their existence alone is enough to garner them success and attention, rather than their performance and marketability. Professional sports don't operate that way, or at least they don't operate successfully. Griner's racist rant couldn't have come at a worse moment for the WNBA. One of their older players chooses to use racist epithets against Clark just as she is beginning to get traction in her second season and garner previously unheard of exposure for the league. The league seems to be intentionally working to undermine its own achievements. The scenario as a whole is especially telling since it exposes the WNBA's total lack of leadership. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert has remained remarkably quiet on Griner's remarks. Even while the league is eager to look into unsupported allegations of fan conduct, their priorities are entirely out of order. They care more about maintaining their narrative than safeguarding their best player. The WNBA's present strategy is fundamentally contradictory, as revealed by the Patrick Bet-David team's analysis. They want the increased income and attention that Clark provides, but they also want to preserve the victim narrative that has been essential to the league's identity. They want the advantages of Clark's popularity and marketability, but they don't really want to defend or support her. Oshana made an especially harsh, but realistic comparison between Griner's career and Clark's influence. Despite being in the league for years, Griner has failed to attract any notable attention or increase revenue. After just more than